welcome to FO Talks. With me today is Colonel Vijay Singh Rathore. He has obviously served in the army, the Indian Army. He is an officer with some experience. His father was General Sagat Singh Rathore, and he's one of the most famous officers in post-independence India. Why? He was involved in 1961 in the liberation of Goa, the December 17 operation that kicked the Portuguese out into the Arabian Sea and assimilated Goa into India was thanks to his father. In 1967 at Nathu Pass, he stood up to the Chinese, he led great operations, and we gave the Chinese a bloody nose. Remember, this was important because in 1962, the Chinese had kicked Indian asses. I had family members recounting horror tales of that defeat, and that defeat still scars the Indian psyche. So 1967 was extremely important. And then finally, in 1971, General Sagat Singh Rathore arguably reached his crowning glory. The first heliborne operation in Indian military history in Sylhet was carried out under his direction. Obviously, he went on to be awarded Padma Bhushan and was greatly venerated after the war, well into his retirement. He died at the Army Research and Referral Hospital, I believe, in 2001. And today we'll discuss what was it like in 1971 when General Sagat Singh Rathore was involved in the liberation of Bangladesh.
He had moved from Tezpur and through very difficult logistical route of broad gauge and middle gauge railway.
Yes, of course, those days the railways were different.
He moved to Tripura and he had 3 divisions under him for the liberation. And he had the biggest area. He had from Chittagong to all the way to Begna. So he had the biggest area to liberate. So he started operations in November itself. Because the Pakistani artillery was shelling Tripura town, and people were very, afraid to go out. So he liberated some parts of Bangladesh by November, so that the Tripura would come out of artillery range. But that gave him a firm base for further operations. Now he was to only go up to the Meghna. The capture of Dhaka was not planned at all. It was to be done much later. They said, capture as much as territory you can. Up to he was given task to carry Meghna. And he said, okay, after that, the government of Bangladesh, or the interim government of Bangladesh of Tajuddin Ahmed, would move from Calcutta and control whatever areas which were liberated. But many people have said that he had his sights on Dhaka, because Dhaka was the center of gravity. Because capture of Dhaka would, the complete Pakistan army would capitulate. So he kept this close to his chest. So by 8th December, he had already reached Meghna. He had captured Meghna, barring Chittagong. There were some forces of under him only, which were basically to prevent the Mizos from escaping into Burma.
And remember, a lot of our international viewers wouldn't understand this, and they'd think this is gobbledygook. We are talking about 1971. We are talking about a time when the Pakistani army had engaged in a campaign of genocide and mass rape. And Bangladesh was then a part of Pakistan. It was East Pakistan. In an election, Mujibur Rahman had won and was to become Prime Minister of Pakistan. But of course, the Pakistanis could not accept dark-skinned Bengalis as their equals. And so there was turmoil because the Pakistani army decided to impose Pakistani rule in Bangladesh through the barrel of the gun. At the same time, in India, to the east of Bangladesh, Mizoram, a state of India, had a profound insurgency problem. And these Mizo rebels were often slipping into Myanmar or Burma and then slipping back in. So Sagat Singh Rathore had to ensure that the Mizos were kept under check, and he was to move into East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, and liberate the country. And he moved in towards from the east, actually, from the east of Bangladesh, because India encircles Bangladesh from the west, which is West Bengal, all the way to the north, and you have the Chicken's Neck sector, followed by Assam, and then you come down, and there are the northeastern states. And so, if you look at the map, this was a pretty complicated operation.
I agree with you. This operation of Pakistan Army was called Operation Searchlight,
Exactly.
in which I would say, the killing of all Bengalis, whether they were Hindu or Muslim, starting with the University of in Dhaka, which was the hotbed of the Army League, which Pakistanis respected.
Mhm.
And initially it was Lieutenant General Tikka Khan, who's still called the Butcher of Bangladesh.
Yes, indeed.
And then he was replaced by Lieutenant General A.K. Niazi.
Yes, the
And
famous A.K. Niazi.
Niazi. And the Pakistan Army had two titles: Commander, General Officer Commanding in Chief in Pakistan, and Chief Martial Law Administrator.
Exactly.
So the genocide started by the previous army, previous General Tikka Khan, continued, and it spread all over Bangladesh, with the result that more than 10 million refugees came into the northeast states, including as far as Calcutta. And
India had a massive refugee problem.
No one was helping us. No country was sending aid, barring very little aid. US was not sending aid at all.
Well, our viewers should remember that the US at that time was firmly in the Pakistani camp. The US turned a Nelson's eye towards all the slaughter and rape. My former chair, or our former chair of Fair Observer, Gary Grapple, has talked about Bangladesh being a blot on Henry Kissinger's book. In fact, there was a US diplomat who sent the Blood telegram, Arthur Blood, and he said to Washington, guys, this is madness, this is bloodshed, this is genocide. And he was told to shut up and carry on. So the US was very much complicit in what happened in 1971 in Bangladesh.
Yes, you are right. The massacre continued, and the refugees came, and the government was at loss. Though people contributed, a lot of individuals from foreign countries, they gave personal contributions, but it was not enough. So then it was decided that the war is the only option after trying everything, and that's how the forces were moved towards Bangladesh. But what was surprising, and I'm telling you but there were three officers of Bangladesh Army who were majors and then became lieutenant colonels. They were commanding forces under his command.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the prominent ones are Major, then later Lieutenant Colonel K.M. Saifullah, who became the first chief of Bangladesh, and he was commanding S Force. And then there was the famous Lieutenant Major, the Lieutenant Colonel General Zia Rahman, who became the chief of President of Bangladesh and later assassinated in Chittagong. But the fact is that these two gentlemen and one more were under his command, and they had very high regard for him. And when I went in 2013 to receive the Liberation of War honor, I met General K.M. Saifullah and about 20 to 30 officers who had served under him, and they came to shake hands with me. They said, we still remember your father. He is more remembered in Bangladesh than probably in India.
Well, we don't remember our war heroes very well. In fact, we don't even remember General Bhagat or actually even Field Marshal Manekshaw that well.
But I'll tell you words of K.M. Saifullah. Lieutenant K.M. Saifullah told me that he says, your father was liberated Bangladesh so fast that he said in 13 days we were on Dhaka, and he said we didn't know what had happened. He says we were. Then he told me another thing. This is the fastest liberation of any country in the history of the world. 13 days it took. By 13th day, 14th day, the first shells of Indian artillery of his divisions were firing into Dhaka cantonment, and on 15th, Niazi sent a signal that he accepts the surrender, and 16th, the signing of the surrender ceremony was done. General Arora went back to Calcutta after this, and Niazi, with 6 major generals of Pakistan Army and 1 rear admiral of Pakistani, they were given to him in custody.
And given to your father in
custody. And my father had personal custody of and responsibility for all of them. So the beauty was that he didn't have a map of Dhaka. So he asked Niazi, can you give me a map? So he gave him a map.
And he was the first sort of Governor General of Bangladesh, correct?
It was prepared by the Surveyor General of Pakistan of Dhaka. And that map is now I'm given to the Infantry School Museum. It is displayed there.
I see. So your father was the first Governor General or some
he was
not the Governor General. What do you call? He was the administrator of Bangladesh.
See, what happened was that
what happens after the war is over? What does your father? What title does he get? What responsibilities?
4 weeks. He was virtually looking after Dhaka. But he made Lieutenant Colonel K.M. Saifullah. He said, bring these people who got a lot of people were arms. The Awami League people had got arms, civilians had arms, and they were all firing in the air, and they were celebrating. He said, bring them under control, bring some sort of. Just hats off to then Lieutenant Colonel K.M. Saifullah. He got the situation Dhaka under control. Slowly, when the Dhaka came under control, slowly, Bangladesh, everyone things started quieting down. But the Bangladesh and the Bangladeshis, they killed all the Jamaat-e-Islami Razakars, who were basically Bihari Muslims who had helped the Pakistan Army in identifying Bengalis or Hindus and getting men were killed, the women were raped, killed, the children were killed. So the complete family was wiped out. They said, no, he's a Awami League chap, he's Hindu, he's this. Hindu was enough, the killing. And
so the Awami League was once after the liberation, it's vendetta time.
One day before the liberation of surrender, these people took out all the intellectuals.
Okay, so
politicians, doctors, lawyers, and prominent people.
So to clarify, this is the massacre, because I jumped the gun. This is the massacre that Jamaat-e-Islami, which is basically Bihari Muslims, are carrying out on the instructions of the Pakistanis against Hindus in particular and Bengalis in general. And they took out the flower of society, the politicians, the lawyers, the doctors, the professors, the teachers, etc. Very much like the Soviets took out the Polish intelligentsia.
You're right. Because they thought if they kill these people, the Bangladesh government will collapse and they will come running back to us. But they were sadly mistaken, because by the time, after about 3 weeks or 1 month, the government of Tajuddin Ahmed, acting Prime Minister, he moved back to Dhaka. Then my father said, okay, now you're here, you look after the This is your country. You look after the country. I am here to help you. And he stayed for 3 months in Dhaka and helping people because he was very all the three lieutenant colonels served under him. They were also helping him to journey. But by the time things had quietened down and the slowly the Indian Army troops were withdrawing from Dhaka. All the non-essential people had already started moving out.
Got
And the other thing, one important thing was that there was an operation called Operation London. This was the amphibious first, India's first amphibious landing in Chittagong and this South Bangladesh.
So not only did he do the first heliborne operation in Sylhet, he also did the first amphibious.
Yes, that was
quite an innovator.
That was it was a. Now I'll tell you the more interesting thing. This after this amphibious landing, those troops also came under him. So they married up and they were in communication. So he had then everything was done. But more interesting thing was that the first he was then Brigadier Puri, who he went to War College in the United States to do a course. So there was a thing written fastest military operation by the least mobile army. So everyone was surprised. What is this? What is this? Then there were two Pakistani brigadiers. They were told to go somewhere else. They were also doing the course there. So finally, he said, the American general came, the commandant. He says, overview of 71 war. Then he said, operations of forward under Lieutenant General Sagat Singh. So for 2.5 hours, the American officers discussed the operations of forward in detail. And then they gave another about half an hour for a question. The first person to get up and ask a question was Brigadier Puri. In American, they called him Brigadier General. He says, yes, General, what is your question? He said, sir, why are you saying that this is the fastest military operation by the least mobile army? He says, General, we've got a cavalry division, we've got a helicopter division. He says, General Sagat only had 10 to 14 helicopters. He says, where? But we never thought that this had happened. Then he says, I have one more question. He says, yes, General, what is the second question? He says, sir, how long have you studied this operation? He says, General, we have studied this operation for the last 20 years. And this is the first course we are discussing this operation with you. So he says, he came to meet me. He said, I want to tell you something. And he told me this.
Well, it tells you something about the Americans and the West, that they study stuff and they learn from stuff. Now, let me ask you, not just about 1971, but 67. Your father was involved in that too, correct?
Correct.
So tell us about that as well, the 67 clash with China.
You're talking about 71 operation.
No, 1967, the Nathu Pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
67, the Chinese were intruding into Sikkim. The Chinese had moved into Sikkim in 1965 to basically help the Pakistan army in 65. They didn't know the Pakistan army would give
collapse.
So they were also shocked. No, but they gave an ultimatum to India: vacate Nathula Pass and Jirapla Pass. Now, I'm sorry to say the Corps commander was I will not take his name. He became chief.
That's okay. You should take his name. He was useless. Yeah, he was useless. Everyone knows that.
He was a typical sticking to the plan. He said, okay, he gave orders to my father, vacate Nathula Pass, and he gave orders to the next GOC 27 vacate Jirapla Pass. So GOC 27 vacated Jirapla Pass, to Chinese occupied without a shot. But in Nathula Pass, my father said that this decision rests with me if I want to vacate.
So he disobeyed.
He realized
He disobeyed his boss.
if they take Nathula pass, the whole of Sikkim will be under their observation.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't leave the path. Then when this wire, he started laying a wire along the thing because he said, okay, this provocation, scuffles and fist fights were going on, which of course he didn't like. So he started laying the wire, and he walked on the crest. First he walked on the crest himself, and then the wire was started laying. When the wire started laying, there was a scuffle between the political officer and the troops, and he was given a punch, and he was. So these chaps.
So that someone punched him.
Chinese went back.
Some Chinese, so some Indian officer or Jawan or soldier punched the Chinese political officer.
Chinese political officer.
In the face, in the eye,
in the face.
Yeah. All right. Did he break the nose?
No, I don't know about that. But he fell
down. Gave him a black eye.
He
fell down. Okay.
So then they blew a whistle and they went back into the trenches and they opened fire. And all the troops who were working, most of them were killed over the fence. Some Chinese who had not been able to go back, they were also killed by the Chinese only. Then the Chinese started using mortars. Mortars were fired from our side. But then they started firing artillery. But the artillery shells were going
above.
They were not carrying any effect.
No, were they firing further back?
So he had two artillery officers on two very crucial places where they could see Chinese. Now the artillery, field artillery permission was to be given by the Eastern Command. And medium artillery was to be, Mrs. Gandhi had to be asked to open medium artillery. He didn't ask anybody. He just opened with the field guns. And then they blasted the Chinese. They blew up their posts, they blew up their, whatever was behind the Chinese. Then he opened up with the medium guns. So the Chinese who were reinforcements coming, they were also caught in this fire and they were massacred. So roughly about 300 to 340 Chinese were killed. And as per reports much later, which came through the Tibetans and through the thing, almost 1,000 Chinese were wounded and being treated in Lhasa of battle wounds.
And India still controls Nathula.
India lost about nearly 128 people, but he was there in India, as you know, my God, yes. And he was. I'll give you a small example of the state before the Nathula incident. This famous actor Sunil Dutt came to Gangtok and he was having a drink with my father in his hut. So he said, I want to speak to my wife. And so he said, okay. He picked up a call. It went to Calcutta. From Calcutta, it went to Nagpur. Nagpur, it went to Bombay. So Nargis was on the other line. And they could tell each other. So they were messages were being relayed. He said, I'm fine, I'm in Sikkim. That's all. And the call was cut off. After Nathula, he used to pick up the phone and the duty officer and military operation director to answer. Sir, duty officer on the line. That was the state of art which improved after this. Because they said this chap can do anything. So they said his communication must be very good. And he was given he was posted to as GOC 11 forms an area. And you are right, when that's the time the Mizoram revolted. And they had captured Aizawl and other areas. And they asked 1st Assam Rifle to surrender. 1st Assam Rifles did not surrender. Then my father was asked, okay, now you break this siege of the Mizo and reach Aizawl and relieve 1st Assam Rifles. He did that. He used unconventional means and he was the first to use helicopters to drop teams behind the Mizos. So he managed to control the Mizo problem. But then Mizos fled from Mizoram to Chittagong hill tracts.
In Bangladesh.
The time was East Pakistan, and they were being,
of course.
They were being helped by the Pakistan army, but he followed them to Chittagong hill tracts, went there himself, sent troops inside Chittagong hill tracts, shot the Mizos in Chittagong, and came back. So they went further deep into East Pakistan. They were so scared. But what he did was that he started what is called a jungle warfare school
in Varante.
In Varante.
Yeah.
Today it is called the Counter-insurgency and Jungle Warfare School.
It's a very famous
It's a world-class institution, and all forces from Vietnam to American Green Berets, SEALs, they come to do courses in Varante. It has got a reputation of its own.
So quite a pioneer. We've talked about 1971. We've talked about 1967. We've talked about his achievements in Mizoram. Let's talk about something which most people forget. And this happens before the disgrace of 1962, which is the liberation of Goa, 17 December 1961, if I remember correctly. And that was an operation your father planned. Is that correct?
No, he didn't plan the operation.
But
the operation was planned by the then what you call the Eastern Army Commander.
I see.
And
Eastern Army Commander? No, I'm talking about Goa.
Goa.
Yeah.
No, he was still there.
But no, Goa is west.
No, it was planned that the Para Brigade will have a subsidiary access, capture a few towns in the north.
Okay. But so it was planned by the Eastern Army Commander? East?
No, he was monitoring the operation.
No, but who planned the
plan? It was complete orders were issued by the Eastern Command. Then Eastern Command. That's not Eastern Command. It was Western Command. That.
I see.
And
no, because I would have thought either Western or Southern Command, because Southern Command is in Goa. It's in Pune.
Not there. It was just
Eastern.
It was
Western. So Western Command. Okay.
So he gave the operational orders, but the implementation was left to the commanders. Now there was GOC 17 Div, and that's why it was same 17 Div. It was a normal division, and he Para Brigade.
And of course, your father set up the first Para Brigade.
He was commanding the Para Brigade, and he overran Goa, captured Punjab, which was to be captured by 17 Div, and captured the whole of North Goa in 2 days. And he had told the army commander, "Come and have a drink with me in the Mandovi hotel in Punjab." And the army commander went there to have a drink with him. And of course, now the thing was, I'll tell you, Pandit Nehru, for some reason, called it a police operation. So, though he was recommended for MBC by the army commander, he was not given this as a police operation.
Understood.
So,
MBC is a gallantry award called the Mahavir Chakra, for those of you who don't understand it. And Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister, called the liberation of Goa police operation. Ipso facto, General Sagat Singh Rathore missed out on a gallantry.
Now, what happened was that after the operation, though technically the army commander was in charge, but physically my father was,
so he didn't plan it, but he executed it.
He was in Goa sometime. For 8 months, he was there. All Portuguese prisoners, some African people who were working for the Portuguese army, everyone was under his command. All foreign nationals were his responsibility. They were mostly Germans, maximum German, but they were Frenchmen, they were Britishers, they were this thing. And one good thing happened was that the Portuguese were a member of the NATO. So they were sending a force through the Suez Canal, and President Nasser blocked the Portuguese navy from entering the. So that way, in a way, he helped India also.
So the Egyptian leader Nasser was one of the leaders. Colonel Abdul Gamal Nasir was one of the leaders of the non-aligned movement, and by blocking the Suez Canal, he helped India liberate Goa from the Portuguese, which, by the way, was ruled by a dictator then, Salazar.
There is one thing I want to tell you. There is very rare for a person to create history and change geography of a nation. By capturing Goa, he changed the history.
Absolutely.
Ended 461 years of Portuguese rule and merged Goa into the Union of India. In 71, he created history by creating a new country called Bangladesh and changed the geography of the world by this logic of Muslim countries was defeated and Pakistan became smaller in size.
Yeah, I mean, the logic that all Muslims of the Indian subcontinent are one nation and they deserve their Pakistan, that logic was defeated in 1971. And of course, it was your father played a big role, but then, of course, it was great teamwork. RAW, then under Kaur, played a great role. Of course, General Arora was fantastic. Manekshaw, General Sam Manekshaw, was a great army chief. In fact, he had told Indira Gandhi no when she wanted him to invade immediately. And he said, look, we have the monsoon soon, and we will lose. We may have famine because the army comes from rural areas. And in any case, everything will be flooded. So he chose the time and place of the invasion. Of course, on the ground, your father, with his customary daring do, took over Dhaka. So extraordinary life, extraordinary man. One last story before we let you go. We know you're busy. He became in charge of the first paras, and he was not a para officer.
You're not a para.
And he then became a para officer, and he was already in his 40s. So what's the story there, sir?
He was what you call deputy director personnel. Just for your interest, the post is grade 2 lieutenant general. He was a colonel. He was a colonel.
Yeah.
And
we've had rank inflation everywhere in India.
So he was under what is called General P.P. Kumaramangalam, Lieutenant General P.P. Kumaramangalam, who became chief of army staff. He was colonel of the parachute regiment.
Oh, Kumaramangalam was a better chief, unlike Babu.
So he was very fond of him. And he said, okay, this is a guy who should go to. It was very prophetic that he moved to Para Brigade. He told him that you are 41 years old, you don't have to do jumps. He said, no, if I don't do jumps, these men will not accept me. So he did the training, para training, and he did his 7 jumps, that means 5 day jumps, 1 night jump, and 1 tactical jump. That means you have to wear weapons and pull everything and jump. And that time, as a matter of interest, there was only 1 parachute. The second parachute came much later. It came much later.
So if your parachute failed, you were kaput.
That was and in his time, this Caribou aircraft which was dropping, it took off and caught fire, and 19 paratroopers were killed.
19 of them died.
But there's a tradition in the para brigade that when any paratrooper dies, because parachute not opening, one or anyone, the whole brigade, my father, the complete brigade staff, the clerks, everyone, they all went and did the jump that day only.
Correct.
Then all the COs.
You've got to get fear out of
this
the system.
This was the drill. These things happen, and you cannot, that fear cannot come into you. And the next day everything was normal. But the Air Force was to keep the aircraft ready, and the jumps almost the complete brigade used to jump on that day. Any incident of that. There were people. He had, I remember, 2. Again, 1 parachute didn't open, 1 chap died. Again, they all went and they did jump.
So your father didn't just train to be a paratrooper after he was 40, but he also set up the culture of the paras, which lasts till this day.
See, Para has a tremendous spirit,
Yeah.
and they, they feel that they can do anything, and you know, they can do the impossible. That is the kind of spirit they've got. So he realized that the spirit is there, and that's why he realized that to imbibe that spirit, I have to do jumps also. So they accept me as one of them.
I get it, but what you're saying is he also forged that culture to some degree.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, later on, he went on to do so many aerial operations. Or his para tenure served him very well in Sylhet, and before that in Goa, and so it helped him make history and change geography.
Now, there's a story in 1962. The para brigade moved from Agra to Lucknow, and they were going from Lucknow to be dropped in Valong. Now, Valong was still with the battle was going Chinese, but General Kumaramangalam stopped the brigade. He says, you can imagine the army was just 3 lakhs, and para brigade
300,000.
It was, the strategic reserve of the army headquarters. He says, God forbid that Pakistani attack. If these chaps are deployed and they are killed, then what are you going to do against Pakistan? So then they were told to halt in Agra, but 17 para RT, 6 guns were dropped in Balong. Now, unfortunately, 2 guns went into the Nala. Only 4 guns could be retrieved. Limited ammunition was dropped. So these paratroopers fired the ammunition at the Chinese. When the ammunition finished, they fought as infantry. Some were killed, most were killed, and few were captured alive and they came back after the war. But then he moved back to Agra. After 62, he raised 4 para battalions. He raised 4 para, 5 para, 6 para, 7 para, and he was on the process of raising 8 para, and he was selected for National Defence College. So he did the 4th course of National Defence College in 1964.
Brilliant. And his career, his time in the military was marked by, perhaps that education in National Defence College helped him, was marked by innovation, daring do, and operational speed. In fact, you could say that in some ways he was an Indian version of Erwin Rommel, moved with speed, or Heinz Guderian. He moved with speed and panache.
You see, you're right, but he was a person who could take very high risk. Because
like Rommel and Guderian. Yes. I mean, like his German counterparts.
Unless there is a risk, everything. He says, how can you achieve anything? And plus,
no risk, no reward, as they say.
He was a very avid reader he had read avid reader of military journals, military books, personalities.
So he was a soldier scholar.
So and he, when he first talked about heliborne operation, his staff who were all staff for the past, they said, sir, SSPU, he says, it means special heliborne operation. So they said, sir, how do we do it? He said, it's not being taught to staff college. So he took out a dog-eared magazine from the American Army in which they had given the complete how heliborne operations are to be done.
Oh, so you relied on Americans.
So, and there was then Group Captain Chandan Singh, who was already VRC in 62.
VRC is Veer Chak.
AVSM. And my father recommended for MBC in 71. He got MBC also. So
MBC is Mahavir Chak, as we said.
So he's MBC, VRC, AVSM, one of the highest decorated, officers. But he was with him for operation. He says, Chandan, this is what we have to do. We have to plan helicopter operation. But what he did was, he took a helicopter and went to wrecking the landing site himself.
On attention to detail as well.
Evening he went. He says, this is where you going to land. And on 9th afternoon to evening, 4 guards were the first battalion to land on the banks of across the Meghna, at the exact place where he had chosen. And then they moved to Narsingi, which was away. Then other troops landed, or then eventually a full brigade landed. Then country reports took 19 Punjab and the other brigade. So they surrounded Dhaka from south and from the east. Dhaka was totally surrounded. Now the problem was that the local people were so happy that they were supposed to provide a guard of honor for the General Aurora. 4 guards, he said we were shaking hands with so many people. And he said we never reached them. So the military police of Pakistan Army gave a guard of honor to General Aurora.
General Aurora was, of course, the officer commanding, and it's his famous signature, a Sikh general with Niazi, that captures that moment of the liberation of Bangladesh. Excellent. We've had a great discussion. Thank you very much for your time. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. We'll bring you stories from around the world, and you'll be able to make sense of the world. Thank you.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.